Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Neiswinger, director, writer, and actor in my newest film, Last Resort. Today I wanted to do a director breakdown. We're going to be doing these with every single one of our films. If you have not seen Last Resort, go watch it now, because mad spoilers in this video. If you have not seen it, you will be very confused, and also it'll spoil the whole movie. So unless you have no interest in watching it and you just want to hear me talk for about 10-15 minutes, then I would go watch it. I will give you a few seconds to watch it, to go click on the video. Okay, now that they're gone, the people who have watched it, welcome. So this film is my child. I like to say that this film, before we even get into describing the story, I want to just say that this film was everything I envisioned it being, and more. I mean, scene for scene, I mean, just the way that I pictured it, it was just amazing, and I'm so excited it came out the way it did. You know, I do consider it my masterpiece. And I know that I feel like we say that every time we make a new film, and maybe we will. Maybe each time we'll just keep improving, but that's a good thing. Each time we keep blowing ourselves away to the point where we're like, this is our masterpiece. No, this is our masterpiece, you know. And who knows, maybe by KIA I'll be like, this is my masterpiece. I just have no idea. But as of right now, this film is my child, and I wanted to make a film about someone who was just mentally unstable for ages. Ever since I saw Dark Knight, which was a long time ago. I saw it around the time when it came out. And I just remember just being blown away by Heath Ledger. And I was like, I want to make a movie about... I specifically wanted to make a movie about Heath Ledger's Joker. Back then, because I wasn't really, I didn't, process... I was too young to process that he was dead. Rest in peace, by the way. But now I figured out that I can do something like this, and I was just so excited. But... yeah, so now we can get into the storyline of the film. I want to kind of break it down scene by scene. Because I don't know if a lot of you were confused. It shouldn't have been too hard of a film to follow, and not being mean to the people who, maybe if you didn't understand, that's totally fine. That's why I make these videos. But basically, to sum up the story in general, it's a man who we do not know the name of. And I wanted to keep it that way. For some reason, I don't know, it's just a thing for me. I think that it's cool when we don't know the name of the character. But there's a man. He has a strong hatred towards the world. He thinks that everyone's filth, and that, people should be nicer to each other, which kind of comes from me. Like, I have this aspect of me that's, I'm not like, oh, screw the world. I have this aspect, this part of me that's kind of like, why do people just have to be so mean all the time? He thinks a lot like me, he tries to stay out of politics, and this character tries, he thinks that people should just be nicer to each other. And he can't comprehend why people have to do bad things. That's not me. I know why people do bad things, self-pity, self-glory, whatever. But this character he can't comprehend that. So the basic story is, this character, now that we know a lot more about him, he's friends with another character, which we do know the name of. His name is Connor, played by Alex, he did a fantastic job. Connor is kind of, if I were to sum him up, he's kind of the parent figure in this film, since we come to find that does not have a parent figure in his life. So Connor almost serves as the parent figure. He's kind of... he tries to help our main character, tries to make sure that he doesn't, screw up along the way, and tries to help him through things. And he doesn't seem like controlling, but he seems protective. Which is kind of like, me and Alex were realizing, is kind of like a character in Alex's new film that's coming out, Whatever It Takes. There was a new trailer that was posted a few days ago, depending on when this was uploaded. You can go watch that at Casino Films. This is Casino Films. I'm an idiot. So Connor is kind of the parent figure in this film. And I wanted to express the fact that these two characters have a very good bond. they're close. I wanted to, I really studied these characters, specifically our main character, but also Connor as well. I have a notebook outside that's just full of notes on these characters, and I wanted to, their backstory basically is they met somewhere, they met at like a job that they did together, and they became friends. But yeah, so these characters are very close, they've known each other for a while. But yeah, so the story is this character, main character, has a strong hatred toward the world. His friend, Connor, basically brother, is, he tries to help him out of this. He can't comprehend why our main character has this feeling for the world. So now that we know the characters, let's get into a more in-depth look at the story. So basically, if we were to go scene by scene, let's go scene by scene. So, first scene, opening scene. Right off the bat, I feel like people were a little bit confused. And I liked that. Alex had that whole idea for the scene, where they're looking up and you don't know what they're talking about, and I love it. I'm so happy he thought that. It was such a good scene. Because it made me question. Like, at parts I tried to, like, clear my mind and just think like an audience member, and I was like, what are they talking about? But obviously we've come to find out they're talking about a gun that our main character got. And Connor's kind of like, why do you have this? We can't have this. And I feel like Connor's almost scared in that moment. He's mad at our main character, but he's also nervous and scared because our main character has told Connor how he feels about the world, and he's worried about what he plans to do with this gun. And, I feel like we each did a very good job at portraying the emotions. Our main character's kind of just like, brush it off, forget about it. And then Connor's more like, why did you get this gun? Like any normal human being would. But yeah, so that's the opening scene, the whole section, where he's, he seems, our main character seems to be almost mad at himself. At one part he throws the gun on the bed and kind of, he sits there before the opening credits start. He like puts his hands in his head, or his head in his hands, excuse me. And, I feel like he's mad at himself for getting the gun, but on the inside he's mad at himself, but on the outside he's mad at Connor. So it's a really in-depth scene, even though it doesn't feel like it. So then the opening credits go, and now we're at the part where our main character is aiming the gun. And I feel like this scene, a lot of people were probably like, why is that in this? And really the biggest reason is for two reasons. One, to portray the fact that he doesn't know what he's doing with the gun. And two, to give a tip of the hat to Taxi Driver, which I watched when I finished this movie, and I was blown away. But yeah, I had seen the scene where, Robert De Niro's looking in the mirror and he's all like,
"You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me?"
And I was really inspired by that, because I feel like that showed that Robert De Niro's character in that movie also was inexperienced. And I wanted to show that with this scene. So it was a tip of the hat to Taxi Driver, and also to show that our main character is inexperienced with this gun. So then he hears Connor downstairs open a door, and they meet for the first time after this argument they had. And it's tense. It's kind of, there's not a lot of conversation going. This whole section is kind of little to no conversation. Our main character wants to kind of just brush it off and put it behind them, but Connor is still very dead set on what happened. But yeah, so it's kind of a tense scene. They obviously make dinner, and in this scene, another crucial part of the story comes in, where our main character lies to Connor about the whole landlord situation. He says, we're doing fine. That's basically the lie he says, which we come to find is a lie. We find out that he's actually having money troubles. And I feel like that was another reason that he kind of lost it. There's a few main reasons that he lost it, which I'll get to when the biggest moment happens. But yeah, so now, we cut to the scene where they're each eating lunch together. And it's once again very quiet. our main character kind of is trying to start a conversation and interact with Connor, but Connor just, keeps saying stuff like, just, yeah, or just kind of brushing it off, trying to because he knows that our main character is trying to avoid talking about what happened, because he doesn't want to. Who would, So then he asks about the gun, and, our main character just blows it off. He just says,
it's just for protection.
And in our minds, we're thinking, oh, maybe it is. Maybe he just got it for protection. But in reality, what our main character is thinking is not anywhere near that. It's much worse. So now we're at the part. We've reached the part when he's on the phone with the landlord, and we get the explanation that they are having money troubles. He's talking about how money's been tight recently, and then he looks at the gun. Now, this part I feel like people didn't really think about, but the reason I had the character look at the gun is in the script. If you saw the script, there's a really in-depth part, but he looks at the gun, and what he's thinking is suicide. He's contemplating suicide. He's looking at this gun, and he's just thinking, it'd be so easy to just be done, which obviously is a horrible way to think, but that's how he's thinking in this moment. But he thinks the biggest reason, and he almost does, what I wanted to portray with that is the reason he's not doing it is because of Connor. If Connor wasn't there, he would have ended it all right there, I guarantee you. But Connor is there, and he knows that without him, Connor would lose it too. So he doesn't, which is, good. But now we go to the part with the forest scene, or the national park scene. I tried to base that, I know that a lot of this it's supposed to be based in the city, and there were a few parts when, it's like, oh, they're in the suburbs, it's we had to work with what we had. So I tried to set it up as, this scene was in, like a park or something. But yeah, so keep that in mind. So in this part, we see our main character, he's walking through a park, and he peers around this tree, and we see a man doing drugs. And we don't really know what's going through this guy's head. We don't know what's going through our main character's head. And then we see, he walks away, and he remembers that he has the gun. This is a crucial turning point in the movie, because later in the movie, we've come to find out that he's seen that man before, but that he's never done anything about it. And now he does have something to do about he has something that he can do, and he has to make that quick decision, do I do this or do I not? And he ends up doing it. So he pulls out the gun, he yells at him, and the man doing drugs runs away, and he shoots him. And that was another one of the reasons he went mad, because he was, he'd done something that he'd always wanted to do, but he'd never realized he would do it. It shocked himself. So now we're in the part when the news is on the TV, and they're talking about the man who died, the drug dealer. And this part is the most important scene in the entire movie. This part, Connor walks in, and he's like, wow, that's crazy, and our main character explains, he's like, why does the world have to be so awful? And he explains why he thinks the world awful. He thinks the world is awful because people are awful.
That's because people are horrible. Okay? All they do is they yell and they fight, and they just can't fucking respect anyone anymore.
And he says that he's the line that Connor realizes something's up is when he says,
that man deserved what happened to him.
And that was a turning point in the movie for Connor's character, because now he's like, holy crap, he did something. So now, they're talking, and I think that Alex said this was his favorite line when my character says this.
He deserved it, and I should have done it a long fucking time ago.
Which was another very big, crucial part of the story, because that means that, once again, he'd seen him before, but he couldn't do anything about it, and now he did. So now, obviously, Connor's going to call the police like a normal human being.
Calling the fucking police.
And Michael, spoiler alert, shoots him. Not because he wanted to, which we can tell when he's putting his head in his hands, and he's sad, and he goes to call the police. He realizes what he's done in that instant, and he's like, I want to turn myself in. So he's on the phone with the police, and he goes to report the murders. He goes to say that I'm the murderer, and he stops halfway and realizes. This is another crucial part of the story. A lot of these scenes are crucial parts of the story, but he realizes in this moment that he can do what he's always wanted to do with this. He in his brain, he's using Connor's death as an excuse to do the things that he's about to do. So the first thing erupts that he's about to do. He is about to kill his uncle, his abusive uncle. So basically, this character's backstory is his parents died in a car crash, and the uncle and aunt took him in. And the uncle actually killed his aunt in front of him, which I don't think that we mentioned in that scene, but that is the story. So now, there's a deep scene where we're getting some backstory on our main character, and then he just rigs him with bullets. And I loved that scene. Whenever I was thinking of a crazy person movie, I always described it as crazy person movie. Before I had a name. And whenever I was thinking of it, I always had a scene where he just shoots somebody over and over and over and over again. And that's what happens here. So yeah, that scene's pretty crucial to the story. So now we get the two scenes. The first scene where he's on the phone with what we can assume is his therapist. And he's talking about how he didn't come in, and he apologizes. And that's another point in the story where he kind of just gives up. He just he's on the phone with this therapist, and he just kind of gives like a crappy excuse for not coming in, like, oh, I didn't feel great. And then he's just, in that moment, he's like, I just could care less now. And then the next scene after that is him sitting, watching the news. And on the news, they're talking about his parents' case. They talk about, the car accident, how a police officer reopened the case, and then how it's now been marked a murder, and how they have a possible suspect, or they have they arrested someone for the murder named Alexander Stone. And he, in that moment, is like, I'm going to kill Alexander Stone. And he decides to do so in my opinion, the coolest bad guy way, which is on national television. So we obviously get that scene where it's like, talking about coronavirus, because that's a thing. I wanted to kind of tie that in. And then it cuts to him, on this live broadcast. He talks about how, it was his parents in the crash, and how he doesn't believe in the justice or social system of our world and our country. And then he blows this guy's brains out. And then he says, in that scene, in the last seconds, he says, I'm going to keep doing this until I feel like I'm going to stop. And that's why I put, after that it says a few months later, that's why I put that, because I wanted to kind of entitle that maybe he went off on another rant. It's really up to interpretation. You can either say he was running, maybe he was killing people, maybe he was just, chilling in his house. So it's really up to interpretation. I like to think that he did go and kill other people, just because it gives us another reason to think he's crazy. And then there's that last scene, the ending shot of the film, where he's in his bed and he's got the gun and the police lights come on his face, and you can hear the sounds. And in that moment, what he's thinking and what I tried to get across was, I've completed what I was here to do. He's really thinking about, in his now crazy utopia and in his crazy mind, he's thinking about what he's done right, what he thinks he's done right. And he's thinking of, what I wrote down in the script is, he's thinking about how Connor would be proud of him. Because he's created this fake environment and this fake side of him that thinks that Connor would be proud of what he's done. And yeah, and then he ends up, shooting himself. But yeah, so that was basically all the scene-by-scene summary of Last Resort. And now I kind of want to do a, basic summary, or a summary without going scene by scene, which will be pretty quick. But with this movie, I think that the coolest part about this movie is the interpretation you can take on it. I was realizing a few days ago that if you wanted to think of it this way, you could think of it as everything he did in his head. Like, he played everything out inside of his own brain, and he wasn't actually doing those things. It's a lot like one of the movies, American Psycho. I haven't actually watched the film, but I've heard a lot about it, and apparently in that film, it can be interpreted that everything he does is just in his own head. And I think that could be applied to this movie as well. Maybe instead of, we get all this lead up, but he wasn't the one to actually do any of that. Maybe all this is just a fantasy he's put into his brain, and he's just living out this fantasy that he believes, but that isn't real. It's all in his brain. And I almost thought about that the same way with Taxi Driver. I almost applied that movie as at a turning point in the movie, it all just becomes what he wants to do, not what he actually does. Because it can be implied that way. Which is so cool about movies when you can think about it that way. Though you can think about it like it's all just in their head. It's not actually happening because they are psychotic. They are crazy people. And I think that's now that I think about it, the coolest aspects of this film. And yeah, so a lot of people had told me, and Alex has told me as well, that acting-wise in this film, it was very good. Which I appreciate so much. The first comment that I got on Last Resort once I put it up was, well, the first and only comment as of right now, was from LCD Cars saying that it was great acting. And I was just so happy to hear that, because that's what I do this for. I do this to see people look at what we do and what me and Alex do and be like, wow, that was impressive. And I did want this to be my best acting so far, just because it was a very big storyline for me. And Alex also did amazing in this film. I'm so happy that he was the person I got to do this with. Not that there's anyone else I could have done this with. But yeah, so thank you for everyone who has supported this channel and these movies. Keep on giving us support, because even if you don't, we're still going to keep doing this. We love doing this. We love making movies. But it really does make us do our best. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. Like, comment, subscribe. Head over to me and Alex's main channels. And, yeah, have a great rest of your day. And go watch Last Resort and be looking out for our newest films, whatever it takes in KIA. Thank you.